funny the way she described it.
So are they... Hi. So is that church, are they like meeting live in person? Do they have people there?
Yes.
Know? Okay.
But it's a video venue.
Okay.
They have a campus up in Omaha now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, they started that last year.
Okay.
They have campuses everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That I did not know about.
Yep.
I think we've driven by that once or twice, like when we've gone to see our family in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just driven by. So are they. Cool.
I can hear you.
And I can see us. Last week I could not see. I'm going to go off of Wi-Fi. Last week I could not see us on here. Like it was just a black screen. So.
Oh, really? That's weird.
So periodically we look at our phones during this thing because what happens is we get a little notification on our screen that says when you comment. So when you do that, even if I'm wearing my glasses, there's no way that I would be able to read what's written on that screen.
No, it's way too small.
Yeah. So then I look on my phone to see what it is. So that's what we're doing. We're not just goofing around.
I am. I'm goofing around. I got some games on here that's not true at all.
Do you have any games on your phone?
No, I don't. I did, but my phone died last week. I had one game, like a word game that I play when I'm sitting around. My phone died last week, and I had to get a new phone, and when I transferred everything over, that didn't transfer over, and I don't need that to transfer over, so... No, I don't have any games on my phone now.
I have periodically put games on my phone.
I will once in a while.
Like very quickly take it off because I'm not good at them. I actually... Have you ever put Fortnite on your phone and played Fortnite?
I've not done Fortnite on my phone, no.
Okay. I did for like... I think I probably had it on my phone a combined total of like 3 days. And I just did not get into that whole situation. But I did do Pokemon Go for quite a while. We played Pokemon Go faithfully.
Pokemon Go came out the week before, or maybe like 2 weeks before, we took our CIY group out to Anaheim, California. Mm-hmm. And so they played Pokemon Go all over the place as we went out there. The rental house that we all stayed in, there was a Pokestop right down the street. So they would be... I just have this vivid memory in my mind of Austin Peterson when he was still in school. It might have been his senior year, leaning way out over the fence, trying to get as close as he could to this Pokestop that was down the alley, and it just is a really weird picture for a bunch of kids standing around the backyard and this kid leaning out,
holding his phone, like looking like he's taking a picture of someone over a fence.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be weird.
Yeah, it was weird. So, what's your favorite game to play on your phone?
Well, I don't play any games on my phone. Put it away, like that. So one of the things that I find myself, I'm not happy about this.
I didn't mean to make this confessional.
No, it's okay because this is accountability. Honestly, this is something I kind of need some accountability on. And you guys are like, what is John about to admit to? One of the things that I'm really drawn to on my phone is when I'm on Twitter, I have an unhealthy fascination with all of the crazy lawlessness that I see on Twitter. Yeah. There are a few accounts that I follow, from the Portland and the Seattle area, where there just seems to be a tremendous amount of civic unrest. And I find myself constantly drawn to that. And I get so angry.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like I'm drawn to it, and I'm gonna like this is gonna sound so weird that I'm gonna make this connection. But the phrase that's come to my mind as I've taken that in is protest porn.
Yeah.
Like I find myself just drawn to it.
When you can get sucked into it without really any effort.
Right.
And I think one of the dangers of social media is we can get drawn into stuff like that and without any real emotional investment, because I can turn off my phone and put it away and go on about my day. But I just posted my whatever my cause of the day was. Yeah. And I feel like I did something. I didn't really do anything, but and that's not to say that making a statement on social media is not okay to do. I think there's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah.
But I think often we find ourselves being more spectators than actually doing something to change. Like, and for some of the situations, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
You know,
I live in Western Nebraska.
We don't live in Portland, so what are we going to do about that?
Right.
Maybe we shouldn't pay so much attention to what's going on in inner city of Seattle or wherever. Not that we ignore the plight of the people there, but what about the people here where we live, and what can we do here?
Yeah.
And if necessary, what can we do there besides
gawk,
thumbs up on?
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah, and that's really what I feel like I'm doing. I feel like I'm watching this, and I'm just like after, like, it depends on the day. Sometimes it doesn't take me long to feel dirty that I'm watching it, and other days, like, it takes a while, like, for me to just what am I watching this for? This is only making me more and more angry.
It's like a never-ending bag of chips.
Yeah.
So you just start eating, and you just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling.
Yeah.
And then I don't feel very good. Well, of course you don't feel good. You just consumed a ton of garbage.
Right.
And we need to be careful about what we allow influence into our lives. And when we're watching something, when we're reading something, that has an effect on our mind.
Right.
I always think of Romans 12 and don't be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. What we allow into our lives changes our mind. And I know I've ranted on that a lot of times with a lot of different groups.
So you know what's funny? As we were talking about what we were going to talk about today.
Yeah, this is not what we're
No, this is not. But not only that, but in the back of my mind I was like, and today it is not going to end with, and read your Bible. And I think that's where you're going. So even though it was
there is a tie into what we're going to talk about because we'll get there. But it's really, really important what we allow into our filter. Yeah. And our mind is a filter of all of the experiences that we have all of the time. And it's changed by all of the experiences that we have all of the time.
Right.
And so, we need to be careful of that.
Yeah. So that's what I do on my phone is I spend far too much honestly developing a lack of sympathy and empathy for other people. Mm. And I guess I just have to decide.
Because the calluses develop.
Yeah, I think that's really it. And that, so I don't have games on my phone unless losing sympathy and empathy for people is a game. And I just don't like that. And I know that's something. And I think that's a lot of what we've been talking about is, so this week we talked about John reminding the people to love one another. why do I need to be reminded that losing sympathy and empathy for people isn't helpful? Because I'm a sinful human being, and I know what's better, and I choose not to do it.
Yeah.
So I need to be reminded, that there are unhealthy practices that I can do with my phone.
And even Paul, I mean, he talked about the good that I want to do, I don't do.
Yeah.
And the bad that I want to avoid, I keep falling right back into it. And he didn't have an iPhone.
Right.
The problem is our propensity to sin.
Right.
And our desire sometimes to sin, and just to do what we want.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
And even if that means starting a conversation with silly comments about games.
Yeah. So confession time is over. If you want to know what one of my sins is, just watch the last few minutes of this video and you'll see. And then you can ask me. I mean, this is something that we've had some conversations about just in the last 27 hours as pastors and staff about what does accountability look like. So here's me saying, you know what, this is something that's a sin, and that's something that I need accountability on. So if you're watching this and you've been waiting for a moment this is your gotcha moment with John. I think I'm giving you that permission to ask me how I'm doing with managing what I do on social media. As much as I complain about it on Sunday mornings, you certainly have the freedom to ask me those questions, because that's how I'm going to learn and grow.
Sure.
Is not just a shallow question, and not necessarily that your question is shallow, but my response might be shallow. So rather than, hey John, how are you doing with your phone today? Maybe a better question is, hey John, how many protest videos did you watch? How long did you spend on Twitter this morning looking at protest videos? That's a more pointed, direct question that requires a higher level of transparency than how'd you do with your phone today?
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes we're really good at masking, and moving away from those questions. But the more specific the question is, the harder it is for us to do that with people that we're really accountable with.
Right.
How's it going today? How have you been doing? Oh, pretty good. It's really easy to answer a vague question with a vague answer that lets us both walk away feeling like we just did something.
Yeah.
But when you ask me a specific question, it's a little harder to... And it's not that we're intentionally being evasive, I think. I think it's more just that's become a polite part of our cultural greeting.
Right.
And that's kind of what's expected. But when we want to talk about real accountability, we also have to be real and open and honest with each other.
Yeah.
So if I ask you specifically, how many hours did you spend watching protest porn, and you say, well, not that much, I've been doing pretty good. I'm going to take that at face value, and I'm going to walk away thinking, that's heading in a good direction.
Right.
If the truth is other than what you have just told me, then the whole accountability system breaks down. And accountability is really only as good as the information that we're willing to share with each other. So we have to be careful with that as well.
Yeah.
Which is also not what we're going to talk about today, but it's all right.
So let's talk about what we were going to talk about today. Now that we've run everyone off from watching this video, let's talk about what we were going to talk about. We talked about 2 John on Sunday. There are exactly 13 verses. It is, I think the way I described it is it's one of the shortest books in the Bible, or maybe I might have even said it is the shortest book. And like it's funny. Like as I was thinking about that part, like how many times we like get caught up in words. Like, well, some verses, like some books actually have maybe more verses but less words. So it's just like this really crazy thing that I found myself like thinking about being a short book in the Bible. So it is one. I was just going to say this. It's one of the shortest books of the Bible.
Yeah.
And you can debate me on that, and I'm not going to enter that conversation with you. But there's a lot of things in it. So when we talked about this earlier today, when we actually talked about this text, verse 4 was something that was meaningful for you.
Yeah, that's one of the first things that stands out to me is just how he addresses, like, I'm writing to you, here's why I'm writing to you. Actually, he doesn't get to that till later, but just his kind of a typical greeting. And then how happy I was to meet some of your children and find them living according to their truth, just as the Father commanded. I really like that line because there's a continuance of teaching that's happened without his direct input.
Yeah.
Like, I think of my kids, like, even just last week, I was having a conversation with our oldest daughter. She was having a tough time with some school stuff and trying to get it all worked out and trying to look at what are my options for getting this worked out. And I know she feels a lot of pressure, sometimes being in places where people know me and she's my kid, and so there's these expectations because you're the youth minister's kid or because you're Mike's kid or whatever.
Right.
And I don't want that to ever be a layer on top of whatever my kids are dealing with that they feel extra pressure from, which you've lived through that as well. It's tricky as a parent to navigate that, as a parent in ministry, to navigate that with your kids. Yeah. And I just remember this statement coming out of my mouth that I will be, like, what would make me most happy about this situation is you doing whatever God calls you to do, whether that reflects weirdly on me or not. I don't care. Right. Whether that is what everybody else expects, that doesn't matter. What matters is, what does God want you to do? And what will make me happy with my kids is if they are the people that God calls them to be. Yeah. That might come as a surprise to me at some point. Like, that's not who I thought God was going to make you into. But more than what I want for my kids, I try to want what God wants for my kids. Right. In verse 4 of 2 John, we see, not necessarily with his own kids, but John is that kind of parent to grandparent transition where he's saying, not only are you living out what I have taught you to live out, you have taught the next generation to live out what I taught you to live out. And he says how happy I was because of that. I think back over the years with students and different people in the churches that I've worked in, and when I can look back and see them living out things that I taught them, it's awesome. But then when I look at their kids living out things that I taught to them way back when they were kids, that's a different level of happiness, I think. Yeah. That comes around. When you see second or third generation of your influence, and especially maybe this is just a youth ministry thing. I don't think it probably is, but in youth ministry, so much of what you're aiming at is delayed. Like, you're planting and planting and planting and planting and plowing and planting and plowing and planting, and you might not see a harvest. Like, you might not see any evidence that what you're teaching and doing is bearing any fruit for a really long time. Sometimes the light bulb goes on for a kid and you start to see fruit. Sometimes the light bulb doesn't come on for a long time. And so when you do see that, it's awesome. But then years down the road, when you see further growth out of that, it's pretty incredible. And I think that's what John is experiencing here as he's talking to this church, or the lady, the chosen lady, and to her children, which a lot of times we take to mean the church that he's talking to and the people in that church. These are people that were influenced not directly by John, but by people that John had influence with, and living out what he had called them to. I think of what the apostles must, like, if they could see a snapshot of their influence 2,000 years later, that's pretty incredible. Yeah. There's a pastor down in, actually, I'm not sure where he is at this point. He was down in Colorado. I think he's still in Colorado. Jeff Surratt, who wrote this little short book about an orchard. And he talks about the whole orchard is in a seed. And we focus sometimes on, we want to see fruit on this particular tree. But the truth is, when we plant a seed, there is potential there for way more than one tree's worth of fruit. And I think the apostles, years and years ago, were planting and watering and probably hoping for fruit, but I don't think they could have imagined what they actually started. When they took Jesus' teaching and did what he told them to do. And really that came down to what John says here: love each other. Over and over in the New Testament, and really in a really condensed way, as we've gone through 1st, 2nd, and next week 3rd John. We should love each other. And that means doing what God commanded us.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about the intergenerational piece, not just from Inhumans, like father or mother or father or parent to child, but from the church. We get that picture in Acts, where there's 120 people gathered in a room, and then look at the fruit of their faithfulness and of their proclamation and of their love and all of those kind of things, to where Christianity is a worldwide movement, and it's not just a worldwide movement in 2020, 2,000 years later. I mean, even within 100, 200 years, Christianity has from that 120 people, Christianity has become a worldwide movement, and basically not only topples an empire, and you could talk about this in lots of different ways, topples an empire, and in some cases becomes an empire. And I mean, that is our responsibility, is to see our faith get transmitted, not just to the next generation, but to further and further and further generations. And we all play a part in that as Christians. Just because we don't have, children doesn't mean that we don't have a role to play in the transmission of faith to other people, to the next generation.
Yeah, and it's not just about what I do with my own kids, or what I do because I'm a youth pastor working with the next generations. All of the church is called to reach every next generation. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a couple weeks. Joe and I are working on a series where we're going to talk about some of that through the month of September. But really, every generation deserves an opportunity to experience relationship with God.
Right.
And that's what we're here for, is to make sure they find those open doors to those opportunities. And sometimes to create those open doors to the opportunity to know God.
Yeah.
And God is, God can make himself known with or without us. But he chooses to make himself known through us. And he wants to make himself known to every generation through each other. And so that can sometimes mean I'm an older person mentoring a younger person, or learning from a younger person. Sometimes we see like this reverse mentoring, and I think especially in a time of great change like right now, where all of a sudden we've been forced to lean into technology a little more than a lot of us are comfortable with. Well, there's a generation who is absolutely comfortable with technology because they have never known a day without YouTube.
Right.
And technology is just embedded in everything that they do. So those of us that are older, we have a lot that we can learn from those people about how to adapt and how to adopt technologies. And so we'll talk a little more about some of those things too, but
yeah,
really the whole, we are here to make sure every generation has a chance to know and experience the love of Christ. That happens as we love each other. And
right.
That doesn't mean I can just stop when my kids get to a certain age.
Right.
So
just when you were talking about every generation deserves a chance at, one of my favorite Psalms in that perspective is Psalm 78, and it's verse 4. It says, "We will not hide these truths from our children. We'll tell the next generation about the glorious deeds of the Lord, about his power and his mighty wonders." We have good news for people.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't hide it from them.
Yeah.
And the way we don't hide is through our love.
It's funny that you would turn to that one, because I don't know if we told you this or not. That's where we're starting.
Okay,
So,
you did not tell me that.
We're going through the book of Malachi, but we're starting with Psalm 78, which is not connected to the book of Malachi, but it is connected. Like everything will be connected. But we're starting with that psalm in telling the story that this is what we've seen and heard. Is really, that's where we start with every other generation. We can only teach what we've experienced.
Yeah.
And I think part of what John even writes about in here is, I've experienced the love of Jesus in a way that other people haven't, and so I'm going to explain the love of Jesus so that they can experience it as closely as possible. And you need to love each other in the name of Jesus so that people can see what that looks like to experience the love of Jesus. And it's not just about teaching, it's about really experiencing and living out what it looks like to be a person filled with Jesus' love. So that's funny that you flipped to that one.
I think that's just the way God works.
It is.
So I guess I would encourage you two things from this, and one of them is accountability for one another. to talk about real things. And I would say by talking about real things, we're making disciples.
Yeah.
And talking about real things with different generations. I mean, I know that when Ann and I were new Christians, one of the things we needed was people who were older than us, and not just age-wise, but spiritual maturity-wise, pouring into us and sharing the gospel with us. And one of the things, when you're here on Sunday, I would encourage you to kind of pay attention to who's in the room.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've seen over the last few months, and it started before the whole coronavirus thing, but one of the things we've seen over the past few months is we've seen younger people coming into our space, younger couples, like younger adult people, and something that they need is relationships with people who are older than them.
One of the things I've really loved seeing is how some of those young, newly married couples have been taken under their wing by couples that have been married a little bit longer and can kind of shepherd them. Man, first year, do you remember? Well, first year of marriage, there's so much adjustment happening. And right now, where we live in a world where everything is kind of all wonky anyway, people who have just recently gotten married, like in the last couple of years, are making lots of adjustments already and could really use couples that have been through a lot of those adjustments for years to come alongside them and just sit down and have some meals together and talk together. And it doesn't have to be like, here are the 6 lessons I've learned for how to have a successful marriage.
Right.
But just normal conversation, living life together. This is what it looks like when we live our lives together. That's how we as a church practically love one another, the way that John talked about. And it's been awesome seeing some of that happen. And in the way that it's happened is really encouraging, because it's not been instigated by some great plan or something that we came up with and talked people into doing. It's stuff that's just naturally happening because people are responding to the way God is leading them.
Right. So be on the lookout for people who are younger than you, older than you, different than you, and try and engage them in relationship. And we'll just close with the way that John closes his letter. He says, I have much more to say to you, but I don't want to do it with paper and ink. I hope to visit with you soon and talk with you face to face. I think this is a real opportunity for us, as much as we can talk to people face to face, to do that. Because like this, I almost said I love this. I'm not sure that I love this. I think this is one means of communication, and it's not a substitute for face-to-face conversation. Right. And neither is Zoom or texting or any of those things. They're not substitutes for face-to-face relationship. So we would encourage you to seek out face-to-face relationship with people, and build and maintain relationships with other people.
Yeah.
And that will make, so if we're talking about what makes me happy, that would make me happy to see that, to see our church grow in that way. Yeah. Where people are taking the things that we were talking about and going out and implementing them, and then seeing it seeing it exponentially happen, because of something that they had heard on a video like this or on a Sunday morning, to take what they've heard and put it into practice, and then to watch other people be impacted and influenced by that.
Yeah.
That'd make me happy.
Very happy.
So thanks for watching today. Next Sunday, we are going to be reading through 3 John. There are 15 verses in 3 John. So we're going to be talking about that. It is also one of the shortest books in the Bible. So we're going to be talking about 3 John next week. And then we're going to be wrapping up this whole series on the church at Ephesus, the last week of the month. And then we're going to be talking about some intergenerational ministry stuff, but not just intergenerational ministry stuff, but we're going to be talking about intergenerational ministry in the month of September. So thanks for watching, and we will see you guys hopefully on Sunday, if not before. So
and I would add real quick, speaking of intergenerational and Sunday, we will have our nursery and our wee ones rooms open and staffed starting this Sunday. So we're putting in all the precautions that we can to make sure that we do that in a safe way. But that is the direction that we're moving. Current risk levels are obviously being measured and remeasured all the time, and so that can change at some point in the future. But if you've been staying away because you don't want to wrestle your kids in the auditorium, which you're always welcome to do. But we also understand too that sometimes you don't want to do that.
Right.
I typically don't want to do that. Didn't want to do that when my kids were little. But we will have nursery and wee ones going this week. We're working toward a plan on starting in the next month or so with the next ages older than that. So if you see me lean like this, it's because I'm making some weird gesture off. I can't stop talking with my hands. And I just saw myself doing it, and that was weird. So anyway, we'll have children's church for wee ones and nursery this week. And I think that's all I got to add. So
cool.
Thanks for watching.
Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you when we see you.
See ya.